on the edges.
Yeah, it doesn't point you in the direction you want, but
Exactly.
it points you back to the normal.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're live. I think we have to say welcome to everyone to the second episode of the AI After Work podcast, simply AIAW. And yeah, how do I say that? AIAW. You get stuck on the word.
Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it?
Work, I think it's easier.
Yeah. So we were in the middle of a conversation, so welcome in the middle. But who are we? Henrik Göthberg, one of the hosts.
Anders Sharptek, one of the AI nerds.
One of the AI nerds.
With the microphone.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then we have our guest today, Mikael Klingvall.
Yep, that's me.
Yeah, and I guess let's roll on with the conversation, but I think let's flow a little bit into, we talk a little bit about your background.
We just continue about Spotify and recommender systems. And I think this is, of course, a very interesting topic. And you started to say that, you get recommendation similar to like mainstream music, which certainly is one complaint that you can have. But that's really what you try to avoid, especially with the later type of techniques, the word-to-vec kind of approaches.
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
Doesn't work that well all the time. And just to share one little anecdote, we got a lot of complaints at Spotify many years ago. This is much better today, of course. But at that time, we had Swedes being recommended Danish rap music. And the Swedes were saying, for one, I hate Danish. Secondly, I hate rap music. How can I get recommended like Danish rap music? And this was not a single occurrence. It actually seemed to be some trends. We need to really look into what's happening here. And then we could see this kind of problem that the recommender system used at that time, the word-to-vec kind of approach, only could handle like symmetrical relationships. So that means basically if Swedes like Danish music, it assumes that Danish people like Swedish music. And this doesn't really hold in reality. So apparently, and I'm not sure if this is true, but the rumor is basically that Danish people like Swedish music, but Swedish people don't like Danish music. So this makes the whole recommender system algorithm break.
Classic.
Which is kind of funny.
Oops.
Yeah.
But Mikael, who are you? I mean, like we known each other since several years back, so that's why I'm so
2009, actually.
2009. I was going to ask you that. When did we meet the first time? I was at
ProSales.
ProSales. You were the mad scientist.
Yeah.
Bringing a scientific method into
sales.
Into sales. The guys who is the least scientific, maybe. That was an interesting one.
Yeah, I think it's. I'm still a bit of a shell shock.
Yeah, but it was so much fun. But then again, so who is Mikael? I think you're a role playing guy. You're a philosopher. To be
philosopher of science,
futurologist in your CV at least.
Comparative linguistics.
So, can you tell how did that start up? And just to make it even worse or even better, depends on how we will look at it. Me and Mikael is both from Sjuhäradsbygden. So me and Mikael can
Borås represent.
We can talk about the West Coast Västgötapojkarna, the guys out in the woods on the west side of Sweden. So tell me your story a little bit.
All right. I'll start recently. I am a sociologist. Specifically, I deal with organizational sociology. And even more specifically, computational organizational sociology. And then I've been, that was my PhD. I was finished in 2009. And then I started sort of applying my modeling skills. First at ProSales with sales, which was a lot of fun. And then Henrik took me to Vattenfall, where I've been a senior data scientist since 2013. Yeah. About it. And I've been doing mostly quantitative modeling, multivariate statistical analysis. So old school analysis.
Yeah. I think we're going to have some real cool topics to talk about. I mean, like just to name a few, we need to talk about how your role-playing faiblesse and how you have taken that into also understanding data science. That we will have a lot of fun with that. We need to talk about, what is a beautiful language? when you're a data scientist? Why do we like our Perl or our Julia?
Funny thing here is that I started out with comparative linguistics. So I've studied Latin, Greek, Sanskrit, Hittite, ancient Swedish, ancient English, Old English, Gothic, and various dead languages. And I mean...
No Klingon?
It's not a dead language.
So how to take the linguistic mindset into data languages? What did you think about? Have you made any?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I have an analytical bent.
Yeah.
To put it mildly. So, of course, I've been trying to sort of rationalize my journey from Latin to Julia.
That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, learning languages is rather sort of, picture this, you're trying to translate text in a language you don't know. Your only tools is a book of grammar of the language and what's it called? Dictionary. And it's up to you to decode the text using these tools. And here comes the thing that's actually informed my thinking ever since, is that you always keep in mind that the author of the text has something to convey. It has a message. He means something. There is sort of a truth to the text. There's something going on there that you can actually try to decode.
Some semantic of some kind, or
no, actually, it's sort of the interpretation of the message mainly. So, what's he trying to say?
So why was he passionate enough to put something on paper in words?
Yeah, but I mean, it's a human writing something. It's just another language, which means that I, as another human, speaking another language, if I want to say the same thing, I'd use my language. So, which means that there is some sort of story I can follow. I just have to sort of build a model of that using grammar and dictionary. And that is sort of the birth of my sort of analytical mindset.
And this now, could you sort of could you follow the logic from Latin to Julia in this way?
It's a bit of a roundabout way, but yeah. So I started with linguistics, and then I got into sort of ethnography, ethnology, and sort of study of ancient cultures. And then I got into sort of pure social structures like sociology, where I stayed. And I got interested in sort of organizations. I mean, how the fuck do organizations work? Because mostly they don't.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. You're in sociology and in these type of sciences, and all of a sudden now you're applying this, or your mind is taking you into classical, business organizational theory.
Yeah. And actually that was when I started my postgraduate studies, my PhD. The thing I wanted to do, I wanted to sort of experiment on organizations and see if I tweak this, what happens. Of course, no organization will allow me to do that. But they want to survive.
In real life.
Yeah, exactly. So I realized quickly that, okay, I have to simulate these organizations. So, and then I had to learn to program. And that was Java.
Yeah.
Was
Java your first language?
Actually, yeah. And I taught it myself.
And what was your PhD in essence? Because I think there is a connection to what you have been studying in your PhD to what we need to do to succeed with data and AI. So I really want to explore.
Yeah, definitely. So let's open that box. My PhD is all about the conflict between. So first of all, it's about organizations. And the conflict between adaptability and efficiency. Basically, how much do you invest into making mistakes for the future?
Yes.
That's the adaptability part.
Yeah, that's the adaptability part, because you have to make mistakes in order to have a preparedness for or a contingency plan. In cybernetics, it's called the law of requisite variation. You need to have a repertoire of responses as diverse as the environment you live in. Most organizations, or at least commercial enterprises, tend to stagnate and sort of ossify, solidify, become fossils, living fossils. And this was actually noted by Arthur Stinchcombe, which is sort of in a book from 1965, when he just cynically, most of his research can be summed up in most organizations once established do not change.
So you think that the adaptability, or is it fair to call it innovation or like R&D kind of operation, or is there a difference between
Yeah,
them?
that's an application of it.
So would you say that there is a strong correlation between the size of a company and the level of adaptability?
Not necessarily. But bigger companies tend to develop rather monolithic bureaucracies, and that puts a dampener on things.
But because the way I have to some degree understood this, when we have talked about this in the past, is a little bit like you're on this maturity curve. So you're an innovator, you start building a business, and then you start becoming successful at something.
Yeah.
And then when you start becoming successful at something, your production grows, and you start chasing efficiencies.
Yeah,
And
you tend to capitalize on your cash cow.
Yeah, you capitalize on your cash cow, and you basically make the company more and more efficient towards that one thing, cash cow, whatever you're doing. And this is now the adaptability goes down, the heterogeneity goes down, so you become more and more homogeneous as an industry, as an organization, and ultimately when you're now entering into some sort of paradigm shift, or basically now if we talk about data and AI, we have our old legacy domain organizations who has been chasing efficiency and homogeneity for a process that has been looking in one way. They don't have the adaptability, they don't have the heterogeneity in terms of other skills needed in order to adopt or reinvent the core business.
Exactly.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell, yeah, it goes back to Apple's commercial of 1984. Think different. Was that 1984? Or was it later? The Think Different campaign.
The Think Different was later. 1984 was the first. That was the running. You remember this?
Oh yeah, that was a stab at the IBM. Yeah.
1984 was the equivalent with the Orwell.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was a stab at IBM.
Yeah, Think Different was later.
Think Different was later.
Yeah, and that is sort of summarizes the law of requisite variety. Is that you need to have a reservoir of different thoughts within your company, because if you don't have any way to respond to a change in your environment or your market.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Essentially, yes. But and in some ways, I think this is the hardcore truth about the challenges with adopting data and AI. Because now we have a specific example of where we need to change and adapt to new types of tools or competencies. And of course, then it's not going to happen until you put that into the repertoire next to your hammer. And then, of course, did you have any? I mean, like going back to your PhD now, did you? Is there an optimum balance here between homogeneity, how to think? Because I can understand also if you take it too far, you have anarchy, right? If you have only adaptability,
and you don't have positive cash flow.
You don't have, you have an experimentation. Or you have an experimental organization, but you don't have real production or efficiency in production.
And you make too many mistakes.
Too many mistakes. So what was the outcome? Could you sort of simulate this in some ways, or what was the core idea?
Yeah, the problem is that these were simulated organizations, so I have no way of sort of taking that back to the real world, because that would entail doing decades of studies on actual organizations and sort of trying to gauge their adaptability coefficient or something like that. And I never did that.
You never did that. No, that's cool.
But anyway, it's fairly easy. The Stinchcom's observation from 1965 that organizations once established tend not to change is still true.
And do you think do you think the underlying root cause is what we are talking about here, this mechanism?
Yeah, definitely, because most companies are defensive or become defensive once they've been successfully established. They want to keep doing what they're good at, and they want to basically it's like a dopamine system.
Yeah,
they get locked into their own some dopamine loop.
Yeah,
this process brought us to success, and we'll keep doing it because we like it.
I guess you've heard about the Kodak experience.
The Kodak moment.
Yeah. Moment.
Classic.
Yeah, exactly. I guess you can probably describe it better than I can, but they were the biggest camera manufacturer in the world, and they focused on analog cameras, and they actually apparently heard that they had some person in Kodak that invented a digital camera back in the 1980s or something, and they tried to explain the motivations for how this could be an improved user experience, but it basically got shut down because they had this kind of weird KPIs of the better resolution, the better user experience, and that was the only thing they did. So they completely stopped working with that. How would you describe the Kodak moment, or the problems that they had? And that basically, went in bankruptcy in 1 year or something, 2008, if I remember correctly.
But it becomes... Companies tend to build themselves or trap themselves in their own success story, which means that it's very, very difficult to kill your darlings. And it's very, very difficult to entertain the notions of alternatives to a primary cash cow, because your entire company is geared towards, you recruit the people who actually already work with the stuff, and you sell it to customers who love your stuff. And usually, if we sort of take a sort of sidestep into business intelligence, is that most companies, they're sending surveys to their customers, not to people who don't buy the services or products. So which means that they don't have, they only get people who are already positive to the products reviewing or is answering their questions. Which means that usually the customer says, we'll keep using your products, of course. But then something better comes along, and more the customer stock starts dropping. But the customers are still positive to your products, which means that you're underestimating the rate of loss of your market.
Could we call it like a confirmation bias problem, that you're basically looking for people that do resonate with the
It's
company?
not a confirmation bias. It's just that they're not entertaining the notion of asking outside their peer group. It just doesn't happen. Why would you ask them? They're not interested in our products.
But I think this, what you asked before, has this something to do with size of the company? Maybe yes, but I think we also have examples of huge companies who are over and over again willing to invest and bet on R&D or on new ideas. Like Amazon has betted their whole life a couple of times. And so there are several basically going from how they define themselves from a bookstore to, I don't know how you define Amazon today, which I find then the essence of actually understanding this, of building in this adaptability, or basically forcing yourself and putting a quite substantial idea into R&D in order to be adaptable.
I think very few companies actually invest in adaptability. Most of the sort of long-term successful companies, what they're good at is sticking to first principles.
Oh, I love it.
What does that mean?
Speaking Elon Musk terms, I love it.
What is it?
Actually, Elon Musk is using old sort of sociological terms in this case, actually.
But he usually speak about first principles.
Yeah.
So what is the first principle? I'm the uneducated here.
You never compromise on the vision of your enterprise. And that's sort of, you have what's the English word for existensberättigande? The raison d'être, which is French, of course, but still an English
your purpose to exist. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Reason for existing.
Reason to exist.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you can't have a successful company unless you're actually providing some value to a market through your services or products. And sort of that is what gives you your reason to exist, is that someone is actually willing to pay for what you're offering. And that has to be your first principle, is that what are we actually offering the market? What is the value we're creating? And as long as you keep laser focused on that, I mean, not get sidetracked on, hey, we have to maximize our profits or we have to maximize shareholder value, because then you're forgetting the principle of your business.
And how do you put the principle of your business in relation to adaptability? So how far should you adapt to new things?
I think most successful companies today, they don't think about adaptability. I mean, they get caught up in their success and they go with it.
But if we speak about the most valuable companies in the world today, just look at the top 10 list of the most valuable companies. It's basically all of them tech companies.
Yeah.
It is the Facebook, the Amazon, the Google, the Microsofts. It's the Chinese companies, the Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, etc. Why do you think these tech companies are the most valuable companies of today?
Well, if you just look at market valuation, it's I mean, they're big companies because they have a scalable offering. I mean, when you can do your business at scale, then of course you're going to be a big company.
But they need to reach that scale somehow. It's something they're doing to actually be able to scale to that extent.
Mostly they have been operating in a void. I mean, Alibaba and Amazon didn't have competitors, so they could expand quite freely.
But I think also, in some way, I like to think about this also, about that they are the first to move on a new macro life cycle.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like you have the mature, we have the agriculture.
Yeah, you have that's the blue ocean concept.
Yeah, so agricultural society moving into industrial society, and then a few companies less than 20 years ago start figuring out what is the next macro life cycle, data and AI first in a way, and then basically starts pouring money into that and starts learning by doing, and then it's a little bit like, while we are now, as a normal company or as a legacy company, we are still stuck on the maturity of the old life cycle, and we need to now reboot to come into our pioneering stage. We have a huge problem now because the traditional companies, they are now in the pioneering state, 2016 to 20, not even out of the pioneering stage. They're fumbling around, and at the same time with classical product lifecycle management, type views, these guys have already moved away.
We are veering quite far from AI.
Yeah, but it's good. But I think it's really good because in a way now we all know how the classical. Have you seen the PLCM curve, the product lifecycle cash flow curve? Do you know what I'm talking about? So typically you have an idea, and then you need to invest in this idea. So actually your cash flow is negative while you're investing, and then you start moving up, and then you have a chance. And this is the old school Boston matrix. You go from your question mark, and then you move over to your star. The star, all of a sudden now you have expansive. You're investing heavily, but the growth rate has now taken off. You have exponential growth.
I just want to put a caveat here. I mean, BCG is basing their models on sort of the modern organization is using a template from the 1950s.
Yeah, so I'm aware of that. So we should not go too deep into this, but I'm more into the whole idea that from a life cycle point of view, they are now in their they're way on their growth stage when most other companies is still in their sort of negative investment stage to set the foundation. Yeah. And I think the multipliers of how they are valued right now is because people between the lines are reading, this is my interpretation, that these guys have the foundation in place. And now it's a little bit like, where do we put this foundation to go next? We can use this foundation for the next market and the next market. I don't know. That's my interpretation.
But that's not innovation. That's just drift.
Or
scope creep.
Yeah, it's scope creep in one way, but also they are now then so much ahead on this new curve. Yeah. So they are simply cashing in on it. Yeah. So how do you see it, Anders?
I'm just moving back a bit to the tech giants, and especially I think your PhD work, which is really interesting about adaptability and efficiency. Yeah. What do you think are different from tech giants in terms of adaptability and efficiency compared to other companies? Because it's something they're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
That really is,
lack of legacy.
So new companies in general should be better than old companies.
Yep. Okay, they don't have sort of the war chests that old established companies have, but they don't have to contend with a lot of baggage that is sort of legacy, because that really brings a lot of the old stolid companies down.
Yeah, so the old companies, when it comes to moving on in data and AI world, they have a technical deficit. And they have a data quality deficit.
Yeah, but
so they're on minus to some degree. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and they're definitely feeling the effects of the sunk cost. I mean, they've invested heavily in obsolete infrastructure.
That was relevant in the 90s or early 2000s.
Yeah, which is now just keeping them back.
Yeah. What about another angle here? Amazon is coming to Sweden. How do we feel about that? Have you thought about this? What will happen when Amazon enters the Swedish market? There's been different predictions on this.
I think they're going to tank.
But, what's the percentages of Amazon penetration of retail sales?
We have labor laws in Sweden.
Yeah.
And Amazon is not very fond of labor laws.
Yeah. What do you think, Anders?
Well, it's a great question. And just looking at how they have taken over US is interesting. And then the question is, will labor laws and the unions stop them?
Amazon is an asshole company.
I actually would agree with that. But still, they are putting innovation in, I think, the first seat, so to speak. I think there is no other company, not even Google, Apple, is close to the level of investments they're doing in AI especially. So something at least is causing them to spend that much money on that.
I think Amazon is chasing efficiency at the moment. I mean, their investments into AI and automation, that's chasing cost efficiency.
Yeah, sure. You don't have to convince me about the poor morality of Amazon. I can easily speak about that for a long time. But still, I would argue that the level of innovation that they have is rather severe or extreme even.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Bezos knows what he's doing, and I mean, he's keeping laser focus on sort of the mission or the vision of Amazon. And I mean, since Amazon and Alibaba now basically have an oligarchy on the world, we're not going to see any competitors because, I mean, how can you compete at this point?
So I'm curious here, guys. Of these tech giants, and which one of them do you guys admire the most and why? Which one do you really think is cool? I think I will start with you.
I was an Apple fanboy for a long time. And that was basically sort of Steve Jobs' attention to customer experience. I mean, and that was their first principle, is that it must be a smooth user experience.
But I think you have shifted because you're a fanboy of someone else nowadays, Mikael.
Jobs is dead.
Yeah, he's dead. So you needed to find a new hero.
No, actually, I noticed a definite drop in quality in Apple products after Jobs died.
And I know you don't like. You're the opposite. This is
well opposite. He doesn't like Apple anymore. So then I think it's okay.
No, but for you, Apple would never be your phone of choice.
No, not even with Jobs even though he was a genius.
I love this.
Yeah,
but his morality could be questioned. I would say.
Definitely. But he was stuck on first principles, and that's a good thing in terms of sort of creating a successful company. Then he was an asshole in other ways.
Yeah.
But one thing that sort of soured me on Apple to begin with was that their Unix license got stuck in 2007 because they didn't like the GPL licenses of FreeBSD, which means that the Unix environment in Apple or in Macintosh products is now obsolete. It doesn't allow me to sort of do the things I want. And that pissed me off. So I went to Linux instead.
But I think there's another angle here. I mean, like, I know you recently, for me, you never seem to be a car guy.
True.
And we had a conversation not so long ago about you have put your mind on the automotive experience. So Elon Musk must be some sort of interesting guy here.
Yeah, and I mean, Tesla and Elon Musk flew under my radar for quite a while, actually. Because, I mean, cars are uninteresting. Cars, they're fundamentally a mode of transport. And I mean, getting from point A to point B is fucking annoying. And but since I have to have a car, so I was recently when I was looking at sort of what sort of car should I go for, and I realized that there actually are mostly, of course, concept cars that is no longer a car, but a combination of spaceship, living room, and pet. And then it gets interesting. Because you're actually getting rid of sort of the legacy, the modern era's view of automotion, and you're replacing it with something else entirely.
You have to elaborate a bit more. What's this kind of concept car that is a combination of a pet and a living room and whatnot?
The Mercedes Avatar.
Okay.
Which is... it's fucking undescribable. It's designed as a social robot, and
so social robot in the sense that you should speak with it or what?
Interact.
No, it's sort of it's designed to be empathic, and it's designed to be expressive to the other traffic you're encountering. You can actually signal them because you have a system of scales on the back of it. You can use, you can program to sort of express stuff, and it's freaking awesome. It's never gonna see the light of day.
And then
you have the Hyundai Prophecy, which takes the concept of spaceship and living room very seriously. Not so much as a pet as the Mercedes Avatar. But I mean, you have a driving mode and then you have a relax mode and the dashboard disappears. And you don't have a steering wheel. You drive with joysticks. Which means that you get a lot of space. I mean, you get a living room. It's fucking awesome.
And then here we have and then we have Tesla, and I think Tesla, from coming back to data and AI and the whole idea, I think we had a conversation around this, that they are also some of the few who in this they have managed really to organize their data vertical.
Yeah.
Could we elaborate a little bit about
Definitely.
This?
Actually, I've been recent months I've been totally fascinated by Tesla as a company, as an organization. And I mean, Tesla is not a car company. It's also not an energy company. It's also not a tech company. what Tesla is, it's a learning process. They have actually taken my idea of adaptability and built it in the backbone of the enterprise.
And how do you see that, or how did you figure that out? How did you identify that?
I think I realized that when I saw Sandy Munro, which is sort of the automotive design guru. I mean, he picks apart cars for a living and tells them how to do it better. And I mean, he has sort of a long history of working with sort of the traditional automakers, and he was there to sort of change things, and he got fed up by. It's very, very difficult to get changes through, especially into sort of consumer cars, because a traditional automaker the car is so decentralized. I mean, you have a whole archipelago of suppliers. You have outsourced so much of the construction of the car to so many different players that is if you make a change to something, it's going to rattle your whole supply chain, which means that it takes fucking forever to get anything through. And Sandy Munro, he picked apart the Model 3 and the Model Y, and then he picked apart the Model Y a few months later after he picked apart the first one. And in that time, it was like 4 or 5 months, Tesla had made 13 changes to the infrastructure of the car. And he was like, this doesn't happen. And I mean, that sort of put me into research mode.
Now you got nerdy on the topic.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I don't really have any insights into sort of the organizational structure. I do know it's fairly flat in terms of command and control hierarchy. So anyone can raise a concern. I mean, anyone can just raise a hand and stop production and say this doesn't work. We need to do this better. And people actually they take this seriously. They are open to change. They are adaptable. They can change their whole production line within any given plant. And when they build a new plant, they learn from the other one, make it better.
And now we are actually moving into another core topic that I was thinking about that we should explore today, which is actually the...
What do you want?
He's helping me to raise up. He thinks I'm falling asleep here. No, but another key topic here that we have explored for many years has been the fundamental understanding of the essence of creating a learning organization.
Yeah.
To deal with that adaptability, but ultimately I think to deal with the whole stress of data and AI on a traditional company is simply a too big journey to do as a project or do as a transformation. So ultimately we come back to, we need to build in a learning organization by design that, drip feeds us into the new millennia, so to speak, or the new. So let's explore what we mean with a learning organization, or what you mean with that. And even I know you like to talk about the enterprise operating system, EOS. Yep. So take us through the journey, what we mean with the learning organization and EOS.
Okay, so first, learning, academically speaking, you have single loop learning and double loop learning. And single loop learning is just iterating on existing processes and incremental improvements. Basically tweaking your existing operations and making them more efficient. Like this is sort of Taylorism on a grand scale. But you're not making any radical changes. You're not exploring options. That is double loop learning. Thinking, can we drastically change this into something else? Which means basically killing your darlings, or rather dismantling old infrastructure and building new stuff on top of it. And that is inherently, of course, a discontinuity to any company, because you have to sort of destroy, rebuild, which is painful, because, I mean, people lose their livelihoods, people lose their positions. They're cast into a sort of an entire new context of a new company. Like, what am I supposed to do now? All my old networks and friends and processes and routines are gone. And I mean, people don't like that, generally speaking. So a learning organization, if you want to take this seriously, then you need to have, at least on sort of the managerial side, who can actually encourage change. I mean, the traditional manager is there to keep the peace. In a learning organization, the manager should be there to break the peace. And I mean, that doesn't happen in many organizations.
Yeah, and so that's also interesting on how does innovation really happen in the large organizations. I mean, like there are numerous examples of that. There's a famous one in Ericsson that radio was stopped. Yeah. We're not going to do radio. We're going to do wireline. Yeah. And then one of these rebellion managers put it to his friends. We got down to the basement and we continue this. Yeah. And this is real truth, right? So basically, the new company where Ericsson is all about today, which is radio,
definitely,
is sprung out of skunkwork.
Yeah, and that tells you basically everything you need to know about modern organizations. Is that first, they are inimical to change. They hate change. And despite that, you have companies actually doing innovations because you have people who break the rules.
So it's the people that in this... but this is interesting now.
The process itself actively discourages innovation. The infrastructure is there to maintain
efficiency,
efficient operation.
Yeah.
And despite this, innovation still happens because people realize that we need to do this. This is fun. This is cool. But and they break the rules and they do skunk works. I mean,
but could we take the enterprise to another model where basically, the innovators or the guys who are really seeing the difference don't need to feel like they're working against the whole organization every time. Could we find ways how this double loop learning could actually be organized? Or is this actually inherently very, very difficult from within?
It is extremely difficult because that means you have to have sort of the top management team needs to maintain like a 80-20 balance between operations and research and development.
It's the old 10-20-70 rule.
Yeah. And I mean...
Of innovation, yeah.
Yeah, they need to sort of stay on top of research and development. They need to invest in it and need to encourage it. But they also need to sort of vet whatever sort of things come up there and see, can we actually put this into operation and does it make a change? So you have to have the guys at the top need to have the engineering experience or the organizational experience necessary to make that call. I mean, if they are defensive bean counters, they're never going to innovate because it's a risk. Because you're dismantling your cash cow, you're killing your darlings.
So logically, it doesn't make any sense, of course.
No, it never makes any sense unless you have a truly low-hanging fruit that's not overripe. Because then you can just bank on it.
So if we now say Tesla has this ability, and in some ways, then I guess you call them a double loop learning organization.
Definitely. I mean, every new plant they're building, they're doing something different. They're not repeating their old mistakes. They're making new mistakes.
And what do you boil that down to? Is it the fundamental top leadership mentality of Elon himself as the sort of figurehead, or how have they made this into the culture or process, or is it there from day one and that's why they can maintain it?
I think sort of. I don't think Elon he did, of course, put his mark on his own organization. but they're not dependent on him to continue to be innovative, because they have built in certain things into the organization and in sort of their business. I mean, over-the-air updates to the cars.
Already here, they have built it into the core process of the car.
It's already there. You need to update it. You need to do something new. You can always experiment, try new stuff, and then just send it out to the cars. And I mean, the same thing with the different plants. They are investing, and that's another topic, that's vertical integration, of course, because then we come into sort of the other core component of a learning organization, that is knowing what to insource and what to outsource. Because you need to have a really good grasp of what are the competencies you need in-house that drives your business forward.
And this is, of course, very interesting in many industries right now. You know, if I take the example of the automotive industry, so going from core stuff is to build cars, or to build, if I take transportation, trucks, stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, if you're repositioning yourself as a player in the transport ecosystem, if you're positioning yourself, not number one, my key purpose is to build trucks, but actually to move goods, then of course that whole idea, what is core competence, shifts.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, as we move further and further into sort of the post-industrial economy, more and more business is about automation, roboticization. I don't know. And basically that's, you need a tech stack at the core of your business.
So can you outsource that tech stack?
No, you can never do that, because that is the core IP of your enterprise. The technology that you're actually using to produce your products and services.
But isn't this one of the main problems then, that I'm a car manufacturer, my core tech stack is my car manufacturing plants, and here we have IT and IT supply, and you know what, that's a supportive organization, and it's even managed by the CIO sitting under the CFO. It tells you everything, that we are not considering the data and AI and technologies stack as core.
Exactly.
Or
I mean, just taking Tesla, I mean, I've been biting my tongue a bit to not interject here.
You should.
But I think Elon has said at some point that they are more of a software company than a hardware company. And if you think about pure software companies, I mean, Spotify is almost a pure, but I mean, they have a lot of hardware as well that they produce, but the main thing is software. And obviously you can do so many more things in being adaptive. If it's just software, you can do A/B testing in a much more extensible scale than you can with hardware. It's much shorter.
But your central repository become a labyrinth.
Could be, absolutely. But still, the frequency of updates is significantly higher for software companies compared to hardware companies.
For sure.
And if you're moving a car like a Tesla into more of a software type of product rather than a hardware one, I guess that would mean that the level or frequency of updates that they can make is significantly higher.
Yeah.
So would you say that this could be something that a lot of other companies could try to copy to actually become more like a software company, even like retailers or whatnot, and in that way become more innovative? Or how should they become more of a learning process?
For most companies, that would be a no-go. There is no way in hell they're going to transform.
Here's the cynical Mikael talking.
Yeah, it takes too much effort. They're just going to keep doing what they have been doing until they die.
Yeah,
that's very cynical, Mikael.
But
actually,
in
no.
The best case scenario, though, if you were to avoid them having to die, what should they do?
Flip it. If they really are serious, how do they get out of the hole?
All right, let's take another automotive example. Herbert Diess, who was the former CEO of Volkswagen Group, he actually proposed transformation of the Volkswagen Group into an software-based electric vehicle company. He was replaced.
Yeah, but if you so the bottom line then is that for any of the companies who I'm leaning a little bit into Anders here, that I think this is the whole idea here, that the new world is a little bit like, regardless of which domain you're in, regardless if you're producing products or you're selling services, or it's a mortar or brick store, your future company will be part whatever domain you're in and part data, AI, software. I think that's the new realm, that all companies in some way at the core is a data, AI, software company.
Yeah, and I'd like to move into also one other favorite topic of yours, which is Julia and programming languages and whatnot. But to make that trip, let me make an hypothesis here and see what if you agree or not with it. But if we hypothesize that a lot of companies today are very hardware based, it can be that they have stores that they need to sell products in. It can be that they manufacture stuff. It can be that they need to work with physical things in various ways. And Elon at least has shown that they can start to move that to become an increasingly higher level of software that is really determining how the product works. And if you are becoming increasingly into software, that means you need to program more and have higher level of code quality, so to speak, in being able to have high quality software. And then, how do you efficiently program software or build code? And I would like to hear what your thought about, what is really machine learning and how does that differ from like manually programming software? What's your view on that? Can machine learning be a way to improve quality of software?
Wow. Of course. Is the obvious answer, of course. But then you have to sort of, how do you actually get your code and transform it into data that is analytically tractable? Then you have a sort of a translation problem, because you're going from code repositories and somehow have to treat them as data. And that's basically an NLP project to a large extent.
But if we continue on the Tesla track and just having...
But it can be done, of course.
If you just have, compare the two things. Let's make a self-driving car, and that's an extremely complicated process, of course. But let's say you just want to do automatic parking or something. Yeah. And you can have a set of engineers that are trying to program exactly the rules, trying to define, if you turn in this way, then you can perfectly perform the parking. And then the alternative of, trying to just use data and learn it in some automated way. Would you say that that's a fair description of what machine learning is and a potentially better way to do it? Or
I don't think machine learning is actually the way to go there.
Now we're getting interesting topics.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, because now we're veering into the sort of general AI problematics of learning.
Mm-hmm. Even for parking a car. You need general AI, you would say, for parking a car? Now
I'm actually veering into topics that sort of I don't really have a word for, but I've been debating this with myself for the last 6 months, and you can generalize learning, not in the terms of general AI as human intelligence, because that's very general, sort of universal intelligence.
But we can argue that point also, but yeah, it's certainly very general, more so than most deep learning.
But it comes back to my sort of view on how you do analysis. You have to include context. And if you can get an AI to understand the context of the problem it's there to solve, you have to generalize the learning for that environment, not just the problem.
Yeah, not just memorizing, but actually generalizing to handle.
Yeah, so it needs to learn the general patterns of the environment. As a child learns to walk, it has to learn its own environment, and then it can start applying. Then you can start applying sort of goals and rules how you do that given the environment. I mean, it has to know the environment.
So parking a car is a key. Then you can probably define a quite sharp frame of that environment for that particular example, I guess. Or?
I mean, you don't think parking a car is specifically difficult because you've done it for quite a few years. But I mean, there's
Tesla car can do it quite well today already. Right?
Yeah, in defined situations. And that's the problem, is that you're not always going to have a school book example of a parking space.
So in average, who do you think parks a car the best, a human or a Tesla? Just pure aggregated statistic point of view.
No one.
No, but I think the core point is
people park the cars like clowns and idiots.
Yeah.
So shouldn't the Tesla then do it better?
And that is sort of one of the interesting points about AI is that the notion of satisficing.
The notion of what?
Satisficing.
Okay,
satisficing. What do you mean?
Because if you're an agent moving in a space with other agents, those agents are going to make mistakes, and they're going to fuck up your perfect plan, which means that you have to deal with changing circumstances and contingencies of other idiots doing mistakes, which means that you have to have a dynamic approach to your own priorities and how you actually approach what is an acceptable solution.
But doesn't that apply for humans as well?
Yeah.
They have to take care about all the assholes in the traffic.
And we do that.
Yeah. And doesn't machines do that, you would say? Or
no, because machines are binary. I mean, either you, of course, you can put it on a gradient. But mostly you have sort of a school book example of this is how it should be done, this is how it should look. If it doesn't look that way, relinquish control to the driver.
Cool. So when would you say that you think we will have level 5 self-driving cars that it doesn't even have a steering wheel in them on the streets?
That's a matter of legislation rather than technology, I think. So I think the technology will be there quite sooner than the legislation will allow it to be implemented.
But let's move into another area here, because I think let's go a little bit into the last minutes here on real data science and also thinking a little bit about. I think here there is a conversation to be had around what is a data scientist in terms of the scientific approach of thinking about data versus what could be a machine learning engineer. Is there a difference?
Yes.
You think?
I'll let you, before I answer, perhaps you can give your view on it. You basically mean the difference between a
no, because we are moving now into several. We are a path into the world where data scientist as a definition was coined. I don't know. 10 years ago, something like this.
Much more than that, I think. But.
Yeah, actually, because I remember we did the LinkedIn survey of Data Innovation Summit, and we searched how many data scientists did we have on LinkedIn in Sweden in 2016. And then, of course, we had 600, something like this. Yeah, a couple of thousand. But then 5 years later, or 3 years later. Yeah, so then it was a ridiculous amount. So basically, the whole idea that people who were statisticians started to call themselves data scientists. People who were engineers started to call themselves data scientists.
Yeah. I started to call myself data scientist.
Yeah, I know that. And have you taken it away yet, or are you still calling yourself a data scientist? I think you are.
Yeah, I'm still calling myself data scientist, but I'm thinking of actually changing into crazy old man.
Crazy old man. No, because it's a little bit like, and this is no disrespect to any way of looking at it, because it's all needed. But I think we are starting to see also a distinct difference between truly driving scientific methods of understanding and contextualizing data and problems, and actually using mathematical functions as a way to solve an engineering problem. And to me, that's not the same.
Definitely not. I mean, you have the major dimension here to take into account is that science, as it is sort of done today.
General definition of science.
Yeah. It's not a commercial enterprise. Science is done in academia, which is a world of its own.
Would you say that applies for tech companies as well?
Yeah, because as soon as you take science into a commercial enterprise, the job description changes. You can't be a scientist in a commercial enterprise.
That's a strong statement.
Yeah.
I would
let's
love to discuss that.
Of course, you as a scientist can fight back and try to do science within a commercial enterprise, of course, but it is not encouraged.
You're talking about that on general science, R&D.
By sort of the
What's the definition of science that can't be done in a commercial setting?
Because in a commercial setting, you have constraints not found in academia. I mean,
but is academia really problem-free when it comes to their way of conducting science?
No, definitely not.
So there are pros and cons of academia and industry?
Yeah, right? Definitely. And I'm not saying that the analysis done within commercial enterprises are in any way worse than in academia. But the job descriptions and the constraints on the different processes are different, which means that you can't come from academia and expect a company to give you the same freedom as you have in academia.
So just if you go to any kind of top AI conference today, the top organization as it producing papers are like the Googles, the Facebooks. So it is the industry that's driving, at least from a quantitative number of paper point of view, for example, the field of AI forward. And then the question is that a good or bad thing? Is it moving the science in the right direction if industry now is leading this? Or you can answer.
Yeah, of course, because then you have the constant interplay between theory and practice. I mean, in medieval times, people built bridges. The theory on bridge building, was rather poor. I mean, the theory didn't really sort of explain why bridges worked and how they worked. But people built bridges. Some of them are still standing today. But the theory is crap. So you have, in some cases, practice is leading and the theory comes afterwards, because you have sort of these practices work and sort of what do? They become a case study in science. In other cases, you have theorists leading a certain frontier, which is then picked up by practitioners.
If we use terms like,
and in AI is because since the promise of automation there's so much dollars attached to it. Of course, the tech companies are going to take lead. And I don't think, academia has the kind of resources to actually make any sort of significant breakthroughs in AI. It's going to come from the tech companies because they have so much on the line.
So, but what are you trying to say now? Because when we are saying, we can't do science or be scientific in the tech companies, to follow the conversation here, what are you trying to say compared to clearly they are coming up with the practical breakthroughs? What's the difference here?
Cash flow.
What is the point?
You have cash flow constraints. You can't spend eternity in research and development. You have to produce results.
So you're now making the distinction when sort of general science or general research versus applied research for a very concrete topic, which is then commercially viable, I guess.
Yeah,
that's the distinction you're talking about.
Yeah, you have different constraints.
So what would you say if we just compare like basic science from applied science and trying to say potentially academia is doing more of the basic science and perhaps the industry is doing more of applied science?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think a potential problem with the academia's type of basic science is? I'm not sure if you heard, there was an interesting podcast with Jeremy Howard. He's the founder of Fast AI and previous president of Kaggle and whatnot. And he basically said the majority of science and deep learning is a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
And you can sort of think about why that is. What would you say that the main problem in academia? We can think, if we just think about the problems with science in industry and problems with science in academia, what are the problems in academia, you would say, with the science being performed there? Specifically AI type of science.
The big problem with academia is that it's an ivory tower. It's isolated from everything else. Mm. I mean, you have an echo chamber of precious few people who are not communicating. They're not sort of anchored into a real world application. They're not even often dealing with the real world. They're doing simulated data.
Do you think it's sufficient just to have applied science then, or is it still necessary to have this kind of detached kind of science, you think?
It depends on your goals. I mean, and this is sort of my take on data science, as it is sort of.
Okay. Data as in machine learning data, or data as in like science experiment-based type of data? Or?
Both, actually. Because when you move into a commercial enterprise with the sort of time budgets and constraints you have, you don't have time to complicate things. Which means that you have to go for a satisfying solution. Which means that you have a model that's so-so, it works, it gives results, it's better than guessing, but perhaps not much. But it works and it's cool.
But I think we have had this conversation before. The scientist in data scientist also implies to some degree that you should really use a scientific method. You should have a scientific approach. And in reality now, when we are doing stuff which is more of actually we are solving engineering problems, and we are going about the process more in an engineering kind of way than in a sort of scientific kind of way. So it's also a little bit misleading when we call someone a data scientist, when, the way we engineering wise, we fulfilled our goal. It is good enough for this application. But from the downside of that, it becomes the whole topic of explainable AI, ethical AI, and also all the things that sort of the scientific approach brings in terms of validity, reliability, robustness, that sometimes maybe gets missed, or a little bit like depending on how do we become a data scientist today. I know I can code Python, I can do this and this. And you have this, the mathematical school, the guys that are the coders, and then you have the more the statistician who would sort of argue for other. Do you follow this sort of?
Yeah, definitely. But you have, and this is also sort of one of the constraints of commercial enterprises, is that your job description is decided by your managers, and if they don't know the complexities of the issues they are dealing with, which is all of the time in data science, which means that the cheapest options and the easiest option is to take a code monkey with a smattering of statistics, and you can just slap some statistical algorithm on a chunk of data and produce results.
Utilizing existing frameworks.
Yeah. I mean, and then you're done. Then you just have to sort of automate the pipeline and put it into the data stream into the model. And hey, presto, you have a dashboard.
I mean, I think the data science term is heavily abused.
It is heavily abused. I think that's the bottom line.
More of analysts, engineers, type of people calling themselves data scientists when it's not really the focus on the science aspect of work.
Definitely.
And I mean, I think the bottom line in this type of conversation is, of course, that we need both. And ultimately, you can make that whole idea even bigger. To really understand data science is to understand the whole balancing act of the whole team.
Yeah.
Who's the data pipeline engineer? Who's the guy who can deploy stuff in software engineer, well robust code? Who can model? Who can quality assure? And so it's a little bit like how many scientists with a scientific approach do you need in relation to a number of ML engineers in relation to pipeline engineers? I think this conversation we are having here maybe now it starts to happen, but go back 5-6 years ago and we didn't know what we were recruiting.
Well, speaking organizationally, it's about the chemistry of the team. Because you can't put any sort of hard numbers on sort of how many sort of statisticians do you need, and how many ML engineers do you need, how many data engineers do you need. It doesn't work out that way, because, I mean, the way you do things in different companies change the constraints, change the context.
But is it more than that we should talk about data science as a function rather than a person or one specific role?
It's a process.
As a process, as a function where you have several different competencies.
Yeah, I mean, I have a nice map of it.
So it's interesting now that we're coming back to the fundamental challenge of the balancing of the team.
Definitely.
But going back a bit, perhaps, to your field of expertise in the organizational structure as well, and then you have this map of different roles and tasks basically needed to be done. How should you, this was a topic we discussed at some of my previous companies as well, how should you organize the teams in the best way? And you can think of different alternatives. One is to have like a centralized data science team working disconnected from like the product teams or whatnot, and then you can think of a more embedded kind of solution where you have data scientists being spread out through the different product teams that you do have. Can you see any pros and cons with those alternatives, or how should it be done?
Yeah, definitely. The easiest, in terms of convenience, is to have embedded data scientists or ML engineers in the delivery teams.
Why is this the easiest? Because I think that
because you can just put a guy in the team and he makes magic and it works. It of course creates the problem because it puts the onus on the recruitment guys. You have to get the superheroes. And usually you can't afford them because they have really comfy positions elsewhere.
I mean, I think this question is really good because it really also depends on the maturity of the whole organization. Because I remember I hired, we worked and you become a data scientist, and we did exactly that.
Yeah,
we didn't have what we needed. I couldn't wait, so I hired a data scientist team into the data and analytics teams in the City of States. So we were sitting in the City of States in the business unit. And basically, let's go, let's do this. Of course, now we are talking 2013, 12-13, which essentially means that from a platform perspective, the Vattenfall data platform didn't exist. From an understanding that I need a guy now who I need to give all the different access of all the business unit data was never heard of. So, how long time did it take you and me to fix your access to all the data? I think it was 6 months.
We never fixed it.
You see what I mean, right?
I still don't have access to all the data.
So basically, not of course all data of Vattenfall, but within the business unit, sitting in the management team, still seeing, I really need to have the SAP data. I need to have this data, and of course, this role description or access AD role does not exist. Yeah. So it's a combination of all roles, and no, we can't give that.
Yeah.
So it's a catch-22. So here is like convenience, yes. Were we ready for that in 2013? Were the organization ready for that? Not at all. So then maybe if you put it higher, digging it even all the way down into IT, meaning that sort of they have access because they're all admin, right? But to put you with those kind of access rights in the business in 2013 was a quite interesting experience.
To put it mildly.
But back to the question then. So this is a convenient way, kind of hard if you're not mature and have organized your data or your platform so you can sort of, in an easy way,
you need really to know what guys you're putting in the delivery teams to do all the sort of data science and the ML engineering needed.
Yeah.
And that becomes an HR nightmare in terms of recruitment or talent management, or talent acquisition rather.
Yeah, so in the City of States, in the BU level, to do the recruitment of a data scientist, HR can't help you. So you need to have a manager who kind of needs to know a little bit. We knew each other. I was in the neighborhood of the field, so to speak. Yeah. So that's how it worked.
Yeah. And I think if we're going to be sort of concrete in terms of sort of what can this map tell you about how you should be doing, is that this map is prescriptive. I've put sort of the different functions and processes in the places where I think they belong. And if you're starting sort of a data science department or an analytics department or an AI department from scratch, you need to have an expert in the top management team. Because if you are going to invest in AI and machine learning in your company, you haven't done it before, it's going to be an uphill battle. And if you don't give it the investment and intention it deserves, you're not going to succeed. So put a guy in the top management team who actually knows this shit. And if you don't know if you don't have the wherewithal in the top management team to actually recruit this guy, ask someone who does to help you with it. Because this is actually crucial. Because if you don't get the expertise into the top management team, you're fucked.
So the problem is if you're recruiting this on a too low level as a one guy first in, and the whole infrastructure is not there, the whole understanding for the different balancing of the different roles, you will have a hard time to make it work.
Yeah.
So you are saying then that so more importantly, if you go where you organize it, I think Spotify is different because you're such a mature company in terms of these topics.
It's a tech company, so it's
a tech company, right?
Yeah, shorter path.
So you basically say number one, middle manager or quite high up, you need to have someone who is taking point, who then starts organizing this at the same time. That's what you are saying.
Or if we sort of nuance the picture, this is sort of if you want to make the push, if you want to make the investment into becoming or sort of injecting data science, AI, and machine learning into sort of the backbone of your enterprise, you need to give it space in the top management team. You can start small scale, of course, in a specific BU.
Yeah, so then you need to be top management in the BU.
Yeah, and there you can sort of, if you want to sort of, if you're a manager with sort of ambitions and you want to sort of start a small scale to grow, you need to get in sort of the spetskompetens.
Top expertise.
Top expertise
into your business unit to actually help you prove the concept that this actually works in our business processes.
Yeah, because in the end, you need to be high enough so you come to the real business problem and the real, what is making a business impact on the one hand. And on the other hand, you need then to have the translation expertise and however you solve it with expert. But you need to start here to then start to really, concretize what value is. And I think this is the catch-22, that if you don't have that expertise in the domain in quite high up, you really don't know what you don't know, so you don't really understand how you can basically look at this process more efficiently, more automated. Would you agree, Anders? I mean, I think this, when you see success with Peltorion and stuff like that, what's the ingredients?
Well, I think competence, as we say, is the top blocker for any kind of transformation for a company to become more data and AI ready. For sure. And as you say, to have that in top management team is crucial. But it also needs to be anchored throughout the organization, I would say, to make them understand what the potential is. So we basically needed to have spread out through the organization. You don't have to have deep like AI skills, but you need to have the core concepts and the potential that it can have if you do it right. And that level of understanding is necessary.
Another interesting sort of dimension is that do you recruit for competence or for talent?
Yeah, recruitment is another topic I'd love to get into. I spent so much time doing that, but perhaps that's another day or type of discussion. I wish we could have some more technical stuff as well.
I think it's time to take a couple of questions to sort of round off this session.
We're only half done.
We're only half done. I think we can continue after the session, but for the viewers, I mean, like, what is happening now in your life? You know, where you're working with some key topics now in the R&D space. I think it is at Vattenfall.
I'm one of the senior data scientists in the data analytics team. We have a growing team, and we have 2 seniors now. We're getting a third one fairly soon. It's actually the guy we had as a consultant earlier, who's now waiting to downgrade to a full-time employee. And that is sort of raising the maturity of the team. We also have a lot of sort of trainees and juniors coming in. So we have a sort of a cool team.
Yeah. And what is the main data questions or cases you've been working on lately?
I've spent the last year actually dealing with smart heating of facilities, and it's sort of and it has reinforced my view that.
Have you been involved in the Gustavsbergs project?
Yes, I have.
So tell us a little bit about the Gustavsbergs project.
I'd rather not.
Okay. Let's not go there.
Let's not go there. Because and that is sort of my pet peeve, my sort of standard complaint is you have to give yourself time to distrust the data, because it is ambiguous. I mean,
you have done something good, but you as the scientists in you are not done yet.
I mean, it doesn't make sense yet, and I have a sort of. That is one of my superpower is that I know when it makes sense, and until it makes sense, I'm not done, and that's sort of.
That must be frustrating for the commercial bosses.
Definitely,
Mikael is not done yet.
I'm a pain in the ass. I mean, my sort of main contribution to enterprise is that I complicate things. Everything I do, it makes things more complicated. So I'm sort of with this map. Actually, I'm painting myself out of a job because I don't really see a company that should hire me for what I actually good at, because nobody has the time, want to spend the time and attention for me doing what I'm good at, which is disambiguating data. I mean, but nobody has time for that.
But the core topic of disambiguating data must be one of the central themes when we talk about ethical AI, when we talk about, AI for good, yes, we should do AI. We need to accelerate. We can't fall behind, but at the same time do it right. That's the hard story, right?
Yeah. I mean, and data is always the problem. Data is always the key, because whatever you do with the data, once it's sort of cleaned, that's fairly simple, usually. Because, I mean, there are techniques, there are standards.
So you feel like the bottom line challenges now, when we're talking about some of the core challenges in the corporate world, is going to be about getting the talent in order to understand what you need to organize and build. Yeah. And then ultimately the data itself to really get that to the state it needs to be in to do proper machine learning or stuff like this. Yeah,
definitely. If you have time to sort of go into sort of the esoteric of epistemology and ontology, then...
We have another conversation here about knowledge graphs, ontology, and the semantic web.
Yeah, the philosophy of science and sociology of knowledge.
Yeah, but that will be the next. I think that has to be the next session.
Yeah, we can start a new series.
I have one last question. If you would want to recommend someone to join this sort of show, who would you recommend as the next guest? We have you now. Who do you think would be interesting guests? And as we say, leaders, politicians, experts, philosophers. in the realm of data science, of data and AI?
I think I should put that guy on the spot.
So you're pointing at Goran.
Yeah.
And why do you say Goran? I think that's not a bad idea, actually. But why do you think Goran should be there?
Because he has a very rare talent and a very unique set of skills that could be really, really useful for most companies.
Which are? I haven't seen this, by the way, Goran.
I have not seen it either.
No, and that's about talent acquisition, talent management, and sort of knowing. I mean, it's a fairly small world we're living in. I mean, the talents are fairly easily counted. And of course, then it has to be sort of talent in a given situation. I mean, one person could be a genius in one situation and an idiot in another.
I think that I understand now what you're after. So basically what he's pointing out is the importance of HR in this and recruitment in this whole concept. And I think we have a couple of people. We have actually a conference next week on people analytics. And I can bring some people in here because I think that this is very important. Me and Mikael have been discussing this quite a long time. And I know that you're passionate about this, Anders, as well. Recruitment, both me and Mikael see this as a very, very important part. So especially in the next, I think, 6 to 10 years, is going to be deficit of people, is going to be change of organization.
And after the whole Corona period, it's the recruitment is key.
And this whole and now we're coming back to the core bottom line challenges. It's about talent or competences we are saying in this area. And if you don't,
not competence. Competence can be acquired,
but the core talent
has to be born and cultivated.
So, but in the what is lacking in terms of the company that wants to do the journey is lacking of the right skill sets in one hand, both on leadership level and expert level, and then going into that, we are also coming into the fundament of adaptability and flexibility and building cultures, building a learning organization. So to me, it's like we've been talking 50% HR related topics. The whole conversation that was supposed to be about Julia.
That's my fault. I mean, I do put a fairly strong emphasis on people.
Yeah, and I think that what is it? Data and AI is not about robots; it's about people.
Yeah,
and ultimately people building and designing robots, AIs.
Yeah,
using them, managing them.
Without the people, AI would just be automated incompetence.
Yeah, that's another one.
That's a quote.
Automated incompetence, right? AI.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, love it.
Damn it, we didn't get to talk about Julia.
Yeah, that's very annoying for me as well.
That was a little bit annoying.
Yeah. Do you want to take that route to go a bit second in programming?
Yeah, sure. So
how did you get started with Julia, and what do you think is good or bad about it?
First off, I'm a weirdo. I like trying rather outlandish things. I think I'm one of the few people who actually said, fuck you to QWERTY keyboards and go for Dvorak.
Oh, I like it, really. So, without having the actual signs on the keys as well? Yeah, of course. Good. So
I'm weird that way. And when I got...
What is it? What are we talking about here? You nerds.
It's a different keyboard layout.
And what's it called?
Dvorak.
And Dvorak. And what is the layout in a nutshell? For us who haven't seen it, we can Google it.
Yeah, you have vowels on the left hand, you have consonants on the right hand, basically.
The QWERTY is these kind of keys here.
And is it still a straight keyboard flat, or is it another shape? But still a flat keyboard.
It's the same keyboard.
Same keyboard, but it's the layout.
You have to press the same physical keys.
But it's another layout of the actual keys.
So
clear.
The letters are not in the same place that you're used to.
So if I used your computer, I would be very annoyed.
Yes, for several reasons.
Cool. Anyway, let's go back.
So Julia, I got fed up with R because once I started sort of outgrowing my competence as a R user, and I want to go into R programming. And I looked under the hood, and I realized, fuck this shit. This is a 40-year-old code base, not at all architected for modern enterprise, modern problems. So I started looking around, and I found Julia, which is sort of a new, very promising language, which is, and the main draw for me is that it's a one-stop shop for data science. You don't need any other language. It works as a glue language, it works as a production language, it works as a prototyping language. And
So
most
do
importantly,
you agree?
most importantly of all, I get it.
You understand it?
Yeah, I love Julia. I still hate Python.
I mean, I think most people have a lot of opinions about this, and Python is certainly the most fun to rant about, and there is so many problems with it for sure. Still, it's a number one language of all in the world today, overtaking Java just like a year ago too.
Yeah, and the snowball effect, of course, when you have more frameworks, when there's more content, simply you're drawn into the pool of content.
Third-party libraries, of course, is bringing Python into the front. But okay, so what would you say if you just, for people that don't know what Julia is, how would you describe it compared to, for example, Python?
Wow. I'm not a programmer, so I don't really know. I mean, I'm fairly intuitive when it comes to programming languages. I mean, either I get them or I don't get them. And I mean, I get Julia. I got Java. I got Ruby. I didn't get Python. Still don't. I still have residual anger when I have to use Python. So I don't really know why I love Julia. Which works for me. The mindset of Julia is it fits my kind of weirdness, and it is a weird language. But
and then in practicalities, they're good at different things, right? I mean, like Julia is stronger on parallel. I don't. This is way over my pay grade.
Julia is great at everything.
now he's a. Well, yeah, that's true.
That is my very unbiased, objective opinion.
Yeah,
I have a number of friends and colleagues that they love Julia as well, and then they're forced to work with Python during daytime, and that's an unfortunate situation, perhaps. And I wish we could have a situation where we could more easily switch out to.
Actually, and this is one actually has a corollary to how you organize your data science process. Is that if you wanna attract top talent, you have to allow them their quirks, their weirdness. I mean, if they love computing in Lisp or Haskell or any other weird language, fucking let them.
But can you do that on all areas?
Let me follow up. If you were to start a new startup, a new company, and you were to hire people, and you were going to do some kind of AI-related kind of product or service, what tech stack would you recommend to them? Would you recommend Julia?
Is not all the different stacks can do what you want. You can make them do what you want. So it doesn't fucking matter. Get people who know their shit and let them do their thing using their own platform.
But will that scale all the way? When you go into the data factory mindset and you're trying to standardize and do DevOps, DataOps,
because
MLOps.
you still have to have sort of handover from prototyping to the production.
Yeah, so you're now talking about prototyping is done here, and then how you code it in the end is something else.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Julia does have the advantage that you can prototype and do production models in the same language.
But you could easily do the prototyping with the scientists over here, and then when you decide to productionize it, containerize it, whatever code is the standard or software engineering
or port it to some other language. I mean, it does take some effort, but in the grand scheme of things, the most important thing is to retain your talent. And if they get fed up because they have to downgrade to Python, then you're doing yourself a disservice. I mean, it's better to then invest the resources.
So we are separating the tech stack now from the exploratory modeling, prototyping, versus when you're now validating something and deploying it to production.
Hey, you're not the boss of me. I'll keep talking.
He's the boss of the streaming today, Mikael. So in this way, he will cut it.
I mean, there are so many things to say about this, and I certainly agree a lot with what you say, that we should let people have their environment that they can be most productive in and have most passion for. But that also, comes back to your kind of PhD work, I think, about, adaptability and efficiency.
Definitely.
And then if you let everyone do whatever they want, then that wouldn't be very efficient. And then you have, potentially the prototyping can be done differently. But if everyone in an R&D team did things with different tech stacks, that wouldn't be very efficient either, right?
In an R&D environment, that's not a huge issue because it's not about efficiency, it's about exploration.
So you don't think working together like in an R&D team is important as well? Or
but if you go the DevOps route, when you need to sort of integrate R&D and production into operations, then yes, you have to have people on sort of both sides of the DevOps chasm open to options. You have to have at least supporting staff that can translate your stuff to other realms or domains.
Yeah. I mean, these are super difficult questions for sure, and finding the right balance. I think this is the core of the essence of your PhD, really. How do you find the right balance between adaptability and efficiency?
And that is sort of also the liaison functions in an enterprise is you have to give them attention because that's what makes things work. I mean, if you have a bunch of super specialists who are great at what they do, but don't have anyone to coordinate them, then you're fucked.
So, and I think it's also highlighting the data science or life cycle or process here. Like to really, it is a process of exploration, fix the model, train the model, validate the model, and then deploying the model. And clearly here, of course, you are moving from one core competence into, in the end, hardcore software engineering, even if it's machine learning engineering. So you're building a robust product in the end. This is a different thing than the exploration piece. That's I think that's one of my takeaways when I listen to you. I mean, and I'm not as geeky as you guys are on this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the translation between sort of the exploration process and the production process, that's sort of the Fingerspitzengefühl of strategic importance. What do you actually move from R&D to production? I mean, the guys in R&D shouldn't be allowed to do that choice because they're weirdos. And the guys in production can't do it because they have tunnel vision, which means that it has to be a decision up top.
Cool. I think we're running out of time, but let me ask a final question. Yeah. If you were to give a recommendation for a company that is perhaps not a super techy company today, but I guess you assume or saying that most companies have not sufficient adaptability today and they should gain more, right? What would you recommend them to do to be more adaptive?
Well, the easy choice is, of course, hire me as a consultant. I mean,
I think that's a great end quote, actually.
Let's finish on that one.
Yeah, fucking hire me. I'll tell you what you need to do.
Cool. Take care. Thanks, guys.